All right, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces. Obviously, a lot of people know me. I'm an artist too, but I'm also the Education, Outreach, and Visual Arts Coordinator at the Latino Cultural Center. My name is Raul Rodriguez, by the way. But on behalf of the LCC, I welcome you to our first talk that is part of our 18th Annual Hecho in Dallas exhibition and celebration. For 18 years, Hecho in Dallas has celebrated artists, ideas, creative energy, and everything that makes the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex such a vibrant place for contemporary visual art. This year, we received a record number of submissions for our exhibition, which was 470 submissions. And from that number, 66 artists were selected to take part in the show. It was a really tough year, and I only expect it to get even tougher just because the talent pool continues to grow in DFW, and the art just keeps getting better and better every year. Tonight, we are honored to be joined by Dallas-based artist Eliana Miranda. Big shout out. In 2024, Eliana had a solo exhibition here called We're Not Fine Here, presenting a dialogue surrounding climate migration and displacement. Through her work, Eliana explores themes of identity, memory, place, and belonging, creating thoughtful and compelling narratives that resonate both personally and collectively. But we're excited to gather here today and learn more about Eliana's artistic journey, the evolution of her practice, and the experience that continues to shape her work today. Please join me in welcoming Eliana Miranda.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm really happy that you're here. I'm Eliana. I am a Dallas-based artist. I guess my story begins in Oak Cliff, where I was born and raised. I'm the daughter of two Mexican immigrants who immigrated here in the 1970s. I grew up in Oak Cliff during the late 80s and throughout the 90s. And so back then, that neighborhood was a little different than it was today. It was a little more dangerous. I was surrounded by a lot of gang violence and teen pregnancies. So I knew from a very young age that at the time I really wanted to get away from that. And so the only way I knew how to do that was through school. So for high school, I ended up going to Skyline High School in Pleasant Grove, which is a magnet school. And I went for advertising design because I wanted more of like an art technical job. I thought that going there for that would be kind of like a pathway to a career in animation, which is what I really wanted to do. But while I was there, I was encouraged by a lot of my teachers to continue to go to school and go to college for art. But they knew that I came from a very low income household and I didn't have any money to do that. Like I didn't have, like a college fund or anything like that. So they kind of guided me in applying for scholarships and basically told me like you're going to kind of have to work a little harder to get to put yourself through school. And so I ended up getting a full scholarship to go to Brookhaven Community College, which is part of the Dallas College umbrella now. So this is actually one of my first drawings that I did my first semester in community college. I learned a lot of like technical things, a lot of the fundamentals of just making art. And I was encouraged by professors there to transfer to a four-year school and then pursue a career in fine art instead. So I learned how to build a portfolio, and then I eventually got recruited by a professor from Hamilton College. And so I ended up transferring into a four-year school to get my bachelor's. I got another full scholarship to go to this school. So Hamilton College is a small liberal arts school in upstate New York. It was a very prestigious school, and so like the curriculum there was very very difficult to get through. It was a lot of like the professors that taught there were also adjuncting at Ivy League schools at the same time. So I was reading a lot and then writing like graduate level papers. But I was also taking really, really good courses, such as women's studies courses. And so when you take those courses, you're not only learning about gender studies, but you're also learning about class issues and race issues. And so as I was, getting this education, I was also, it was starting to activate me as well. And I was starting to become an activist there. As far as the art goes, I had a few major influences in my undergraduate. I was looking into a lot of political movements. And so, one of the artists that I was really into, one of the movements that I was really into was the Mexican muralist movement of the 1920s. And so, I was looking at a lot of like murals from Diego Rivera, especially the ones that are in Mexico. And so at that time, I was really interested in looking at his work because it was kind of like the first time I was actually seeing an accurate depiction of Mexican history. And one of the things that really resonated me with this work is that a lot of the things that he was making work about were no matter how violent the history was, like he had like the courage to kind of display this work and also display it in public spaces and even like on government buildings. And so I was looking at his work a lot while I was making the work in my studio. But one of my favorite pieces from that movement is this mural that was done by Jose Clemente Orozco, and it was really like this portion of that mural that I was really interested in. It's the murals at Dartmouth, which is an Ivy League school, and so I really like this portion of the mural. And so what you're seeing is just like these groups of scholars, and you have like someone giving birth to all of these books, and then like dead fetuses, and so I was basically what he's trying to say is that you have all of these scholars giving birth to dead information, and like what it's saying is that you can talk about class issues all you want in books through theory and academia, but you can also at the same time be very disconnected to what's actually occurring out in the real world if you're not connected to those communities and you're just immersing yourself within these institutions. And so that was something that um, was interesting to me because of the location, like where I was getting my education at the time, because I definitely felt disconnected from a lot of the students there and a lot of the professors there, because I certainly felt like the the difference between where I grew up versus like other of my classmates who came from a lot of money, and so I definitely felt othered while I was there, and so I always kind of like made a vow like ever since like undergraduate to always just like make art that was connected to my community somehow. So I moved back to Dallas. It was really hard for me to be up there. I'm very thankful for that education, but I also, it was really hard for me to be uprooted from my community. So I moved back to Dallas, and then I worked on a portfolio to get into graduate school. So I ended up going to the University of Dallas, and there I was trying to figure out what I wanted to make work about. And I knew it was going to be about social issues. I just didn't know what just yet. And so I ended up landing on immigration issues because it's what I knew best. And, both of my parents were immigrants. There, I was really interested in quite a few artists, but I'll just like focus on two of them. So one of them was KERA Walker. I was looking at her silhouette work at the time, And so she made work about slavery. And one of the things that I was really interested with her work is just the how big it was and how almost like at first sight it's like very enchanting looking, but then when you look closer, it's very very violent. Um, and I just love how she depicts a narrative and does it very minimally, without a lot of like visual noise, and it's very straight to the point. And I really like that immediacy in her message. I was also really into this body of work by Vincent Valdez, The Stranger's Fruit, which is basically about the lynching of Mexicans after the signing of the 1848 treaty. And so at the time, I want to say it was like 2015, 2014, this work was being exhibited. And I was um, I was kind of like floored by it because I didn't know about this at all, you know? And it was like I didn't know that this was like something that took place in history, and like the history of my people. And so it was like one of those moments where I realized that a lot of our history is completely taken out of the books, you know. And so I knew at that moment that if I ever wanted to learn about the history of my people, that I was going to have to seek out that information on my own and not, you know, rely on these like schools or institutions to give it to me. So my thesis for graduate school ended up being on basically the U.S. Mexico border, immigration to the border, and the portrayal of immigrants in the media, and how that's kind of used to create tensions between the United States and Mexico. I A lot of my work is very research heavy, so at that time I was reading through a lot of newspapers, a lot of books, journals, anything I could get my hands on that talked about current immigration issues. And so I was looking through those things, and I was kind of like looking at the imagery in a lot of the media, and I was starting to pick up on like a pattern of how immigrants were portrayed in it. And so often they were like I started painting them to kind of like, you know, not identify this. So I started taking their identities away in my work because that's kind of how they were portrayed in the media, where they weren't really seen as individuals, but they were seen as these like mass groups of people. And I feel like that was like a tactic to instill fear. And so they were also depicted in ways like they were always like associated with trash. In this piece that I have like the Border Patrol wearing latex gloves, which was an image that I saw frequently at that time. So that's why I labeled it "Don't Touch Anything" because it just like kind of um, made it seem as though immigrants were like these diseased people. Um, and so I was painting a lot about that and detention centers because back in 2015, uh, not a lot of people knew about detention centers back then. I mean, those stories were getting buried in newspapers. And honestly, like I couldn't even like find those stories in local papers. I was starting to learn about them like from other newspapers like the New York Times. And so not a lot of people were talking about that. And so I was, you know, I took it as like a responsibility to, you know, show people what's actually happening. Um, so after I graduated, I tried to figure out what I wanted to do, and Trump was elected for his first term, and so I ended up booking a flight to Washington D.C. to attend the Women's March the day after his inauguration. And so this is an image. This is a picture of us standing in front of the Capitol the night before, kind of not really knowing the magnitude of that march the next day. And so the march happened, and it was just a life changing experience for me because, you know, I flew there like very upset about the whole election, but when I got there, I felt like I wasn't alone in that. And marching along like all of these activists who were a part of these like major activist organizations was really an amazing experience because they were, instead of kind of just dwelling on it, they were like, let's get to work, you know? And so, um, I, further became like a little activated in that sense too, and wanted to like come back to Dallas and see what organizations I wanted to be a part of. So I did a few things. I hooked up with a few organizations like the ACLU, but one of them was Greenpeace. And so what you're seeing is us kind of inflating a giant blimp for an an Exxon protest because they had a shareholders meeting here in Dallas. And so I hooked up with them for a second. But it was like really when I went to Houston and hooked up with this group called Preemptive Love Coalition. I went down there to help build houses for Hurricane Harvey victims. And so I was there um, building houses. And while we were there, we were invited to go to a more low income neighborhood to celebrate a house that had just been rebuilt. And so the family invited us over. We had dinner. It was like a big celebration and stuff. And it was a great experience, and I was very happy for the family. But I remember being there that night and like kind of looking at the neighborhood and thinking it's gonna flood over here because that neighborhood completely flooded. It was like completely underwater at one point. And I remember that night thinking that it was going to flood again. And I was like, we can keep building all we want, but at the end of the day, we're just kind of putting a band-aid on it. No one's really addressing the root of the issue. And so I came back to Dallas, and I decided to kind of like devote my practice to climate issues. The newspaper clipping on the left is something I actually pulled from a newspaper in 2012 while I was in grad school. And it's actually an image that I continue to have in my studio, wherever my studio is at that moment. Um, when I was in grad school and doing research on immigration, I kept coming across the term climate refugee and climate migration. And I always knew people, there was movements of people immigrating for various reasons, like political, economic. Environmental was something that I thought was like more of a prehistoric thing, like Ice Age and all that stuff. I didn't think that it was a problem currently until I started seeing those terms in my research. And then I kept coming across these articles. And so, like, the image that you're seeing from that clipping is like this island where all of this trash is accumulating. They're building houses on stilts to deal with the problem. And so I remember seeing that in grad school and thinking, this is going to be a huge problem in the future now. And I'm going to put this on the back burner until I'm done with grad school, and then I'll come back to it because this is interesting to me. And so this little drawing here is something that I did while I was in grad school and thinking about it. So I've been making work about climate migration for at least 6 years now. I started to focus on, at first I started making work about, like environmental disasters all over the world, major flooding in coastal cities. But I ended up honing back into our region, and I started looking into people moving from Latin America towards the border because of environmental issues. And I was actually finding a lot of research on that. I learned about this area in Central America called El Corredor Seco, which means the dry corridor. And that area is experiencing, due to extreme heat, it's experiencing a lot of drought and a lot of severity in their storms, which is causing massive flooding. So a lot of people are having to move because of those things. And so I see climate issues as like a very intersectional thing. It affects many things. It impacts a lot of people, but a big takeaway, and that what I want people to understand, that it's going to affect, and it is affecting, the poorest communities in the world right now. And so this piece I did in 2021. It was actually acquired by the Mexicarte Museum in Austin, so it's part of their permanent collection now. And so here I have another painting that I did, playing with those like two conflicting things, like massive flooding, um, and drought, and what it does to families when they have to move. Making this type of work really helped me think a lot about my cultural identity and my history, um, and our connection to the land. Um, I started to think about the concept of a home. And when I'm reading through all of these stories, I was thinking how scary it must be to have to be displaced from the land that you consider your home, to be displaced and not be able to come back because it's uninhabitable. That was a very, very scary thought to me. And so I've been playing with that idea of what the concept of a home is and our connection to land. So at this point, I was starting to get shows, thankfully, and I was thinking a lot about spaces. And I was reached out by the Gallery of Dallas, which is the mall here. And they said, we would like for you to be our window artist, our featured window artist for Hispanic Heritage Month. And I was like, what am I getting asked to do now? Because I'm like, I'm going to be a window artist. Like, what is this? Right. And so I looked into it. And then they were like, yeah, we're going to have you like right next to Gucci and, some other Bachendorf, I don't know, some crazy watch store. And I looked into it because I thought it was a little weird. But I was like, this is really interesting because I feel like, being in graduate school, you're kind of conditioned to believe that you should only be showing in specific spaces. Like, you should be showing in commercial galleries or museums and, schools and things like that. And so I decided to go forward with it because I thought it was a great idea because it's in a public space and I have access to people who don't even go to art stuff at all. There's a lot of people that go to the mall that have never even stepped foot into a museum or go to exhibition receptions or anything like that. And so yeah, so I was thinking a lot about showing, making sure that I also show in non-conventional spaces. One of the things that I do is, as part of my practice, and I started to do a lot of public speaking. I've spoken on a lot of panels. One of the most important things that I've done is speaking at the World Social Sciences Conference for the Association for Borderland Studies. I was on a panel with three other scholars and artists who make work about the US Mexico border. But doing this type of thing is very important for me because I get to talk about the work that I do, and connect with the community that exists outside of the art realm. So I was trying to figure out what my next step was. One of the influences at this time was an exhibition that took place at the National Sculpture Center called Groundswell Women of Land Art. It featured about 12 women artists who made work about the land. And so it was an exhibition that was shown underneath a historical lens. So a lot of the women featured in the show range from like the 1970s to the 80s, 60s. But this show was really interesting to me because of how these women connected with the land through the use of materials. And some of them didn't even use materials; they connected with the land through their own bodies, through performance. Um, the biggest takeaway that I took from this exhibition was how ephemeral a lot of it was. There were a lot of photography, like pictures of things that don't even, like these pieces that don't even exist anymore. And so I thought that was really interesting because it's different than putting a price tag on an artwork and then putting it up in a wall somewhere. Something that's only temporary is making it really truly only about the experience. And so it was something that I was already starting to think about because I was starting to get into installation work. So I had two big shows lined up at this point, one at the Oak Cliff Cultural Center and one at the Latino Cultural Center. And I was trying to figure out what kind of work I wanted to make for them. There were a series of legislative maneuvers that happened in the summer of 2023. Um, if you remember the summer of 2023, it was one of the hottest summers we've ever experienced here. We hit triple digit weather for a month straight in August. But during that time, there were two things that were done in Texas. One of them was the deployment of 1,000-foot buoys that was set on the Rio Grande. And these things are just like large, kind of like floating devices that are placed on the water that have blades and then netting underneath the water. And it's meant to deter immigrants from crossing. And then another one was the elimination of mandatory water breaks for construction workers. And so I was pretty angry about that because the majority of construction workers are immigrants. And so clearly these two things were an attack on the immigrant community. And so I couldn't really wrap my head around the fact that we've reached a point where our government's actually depriving people of water. And that's like our natural right. And so you're basically killing people at that point. And so I decided, and at the time I was getting into heat a lot and the idea of heat. And so I decided to devote the next body of work to heat related issues at the US Mexico border. So the piece that you're seeing is called Yesterday's News, and it's a collection of my research and like a lot of the articles that I've been collecting about heat-related disasters from this region. And all of it is sitting underneath the 2023 Climate Index. So that's what the little pixels are. This piece is about the deployment of those buoys and how it just kind of disrupts the waterways, and it also disrupts the ecosystems that exist in the water. So this was from the show that I had at the Oak Cliff Cultural Center, and so I wanted to make a piece about the heat island effect here in our cities because I was talking about heat at the border, but I wanted to connect a heat related issue locally so that people understand that this is something that occurs everywhere. And so heat island what the heat island effect is that certain pockets in a city are going to be hotter than others, and typically those areas are located in low income areas where they can't afford to plant trees and things like that. And so the trees is what tree canopy is what cools off the earth basically. And so if you keep having just nothing but asphalt and pavement everywhere, you're just going to make things hotter. So if you've ever walked down Jefferson Boulevard, which is where the Oak Cliff Cultural Center is located, in the middle of the summer, all of that heat just like radiates off of the ground. It's incredibly hot there. And so I just installed thermometers on the windows, and then I documented people that were walking by. And this my show took place in the middle of August as well. So in December 2024, I had the honor of having a show here at the Latino Cultural Center called "We're Not Fine Here." And so I did kind of like a continuation of this heat thing and started, talking about how the earth is used as a weapon to hurt people, hurt immigrants at the border. There were just a lot of images that I just kept finding. I kept finding a lot of like militant soldiers or militia that were just guarding water. I also did a series called Scene Theme because I wanted to kind of add like a personal touch to the show. And so I made a series of paintings in a post certification situation of like, I was thinking about what would be left behind of me if I had to move and I had to be displaced. So I started pulling personal objects from my home and then painting them. This is an installation piece that I did called Mas Agua, and this features a, a line of people waiting for the water convoy to come and disperse water to their community. This is a big issue in Mexico now, and it's addressing like this article that I read about this community in Mexico City um, where the water is very scarce. And so again, I'm not putting identities to them either. So I'm kind of still continuing the silhouette type of thing, or just like not, indicating individuals so much. And also, those pixels are the 2024 climate index, and the beams are an indication of the border wall. Because it's kind of a reminder to people that these stories exist south of the border, and there's kind of a reason why people move. I did another installation here called Que Calor, and I named it after the show that I had at the Latino Cultural Center. I did this artwork to reference the weaponization of the land. I did a giant funnel out of wire, and then I kind of just put a ton of helicopters and a red light on them. Um, I wanted to make something about how there's like these tactics that they use at the border. One of them is to what they do is they do a lot of heavy surveillance in the areas where it's easiest to cross, and it's a tactic they do. So what that does is it pushes people to cross in the most dangerous areas, like the desert, where a lot of people end up dying because of the heat. Um, Another tactic is these helicopters kind of lower to the ground when they see immigrants crossing, and then with the propellers, they kick up the dirt and dust, and what it does, it just like disorients them. So that's just kind of like another way the environment is used as a weapon. The show is great. I ended up getting a lot of press from that. I did an interview with Elizabeth Mayan from KERA, and eventually it went to radio, and then it ended up getting published in the Dallas Morning News. But it was a good opportunity because getting published in the Dallas Morning News gave me access to other people as well. And so that's how other people found out about me. I was reached out by Telemundo. Their meteorologist, Koruska, reached out to me and did a studio visit, and she wanted to feature my work in a climate segment that aired for Earth Day. But it was really important that I did this segment because of I was able to do it in Spanish, and I was able to kind of have a wider outreach. I also got into the Cedars Union around this time, so I'm still there. I'm currently part of cohort 5. This was important for me to do too. I view the Cedars as this place of education, and I wanted to be a part of that community to connect with other artists and other leaders of the community because I, at some point, would like to be a leader in the community, in the art community. And so um, I went in with that and then just trying to figure out how to make my work sustainable and to also, learn. So I spent the majority of being at the Cedars experimenting with materials. Around this time, I applied for to attend Pellin School of Craft in North Carolina, and I got a full scholarship to attend a 2-week natural dye workshop. Natural dyeing is basically you extract color from plants, and then we dyed fabric with them. So those are the various plants that we extracted dye from, and then we put them in a dye pot and get color. Um, this was kind of like another life changing thing for me. This experience, I've never worked with materials this way. Uh, it is a very different experience to work this way versus me going to a store, buying a tube of paint, and then painting with it. Um, Dyeing out of from straight from plants and extracting it out in that way made me really care for the materials more. There was like almost like a level of just nurturing them. I had to be careful handling them and watch them in the dye pot and make sure they were at the right temperature when I was boiling them. um, that was a very different experience for me, and it felt like everything that I was doing before that was just the materials were more disposable. So it was something that I just like kind of wanted to continue to play with. I had a show at a pop up space in off of Maine in Deep Ellum, and I took this as an opportunity to do two huge installations. I did a graph that I took from the 2024 climate report, and it's a graph about the heating of the Earth's surface, taken from the Industrial Revolution to now. And so, what you're seeing is there are slats of wood, and I spray painted them using aerosol paint. And so there's like a strip of red at the very, very bottom. Get closer. So I threw some text on there, and it's the first paragraph of that report, basically telling people the many ways that heat is impacting the world right now. And so it's talking about biodiversity, food scarcity, and the displacement of people. I also ended up doing another one, and this is where I was able to actually, now that I was learning how to use natural dyes, I started making artwork from them. So I wanted to do another local heat issue, especially since the space was located in Deep Ellum. So what I did was I did a map of Dallas on fabric, and I wanted to talk about how urban development is contributing to the heat island effect. So I printed on the fabric all of the roadways, which are done with iron and aluminum acetate. And so just like the iron, these chemicals are eating away at the, well, then I dyed the fabric in Brazil wood, which is a plant. But just like these chemicals are eating away at the natural dyes, it's kind of like it runs parallel to the way urban development is eating away at the land. I've been making some smaller works too. And so this is a piece called Marigold, and it's about how marigolds are not growing as fastly anymore in our region. So, of course, I used natural dyes, and I used marigolds to dye it. This is another one about a woman and her child trying to cross the river, and they died because of the water. Um, so I've been very lucky to continue to have this like outreach. I lately I've been connecting with a lot of scientists and like medical people. I was invited to do an artist talk at UT Southwestern to a group of medical students. These students had just finished learning a lot about heat related issues and health and how that's affecting people medically, which is what it was a great experience because I was able to have the discussion that I wanted with them because they also see heat as an intersectional thing too. And so it's very much tied to, there's like you know, a lot of people are going to get sick because of the heat, but it's also very much interrelated with people who are located in low income areas as well. A lot of them don't have access to like healthcare too. So there's just like a lot of like multi-layered, like faceted ways that this is like affecting people. I also am currently working on an article with two anthropologists who came out and want to write it. They're working on a project about heat. And so this is Dr. Rose Jones, and I also had Dr. Marsha Pryor in the studio visit. And then I think that article is supposed to come out this summer. As far as like my upcoming things, I ended up getting an awarded residency out in Oregon at Playa Summer Lake. And I'll be in a cohort with other artists and other scientists who are there studying the land. And so hopefully throughout this residency, I can actually start making some land art is kind of the goal. And then also next year, I was one of the selected artists for Kinfolk. And so I'll be exhibiting with a ton of other amazing artists who are doing great things in our community. And that's about it. So.
All right, thank you, Eliana. I think we're gonna open up the room for questions, and I have this mic here. If anybody has a question, I'll give you the mic. That way we can pick up good audio in our video recording. You can see the first person here.
Hi, Eliana.
Hi, Danielle.
Can you speak a little bit about what you plan to do at these wonderful residencies you're coming up?
Yeah, so the residency that I have coming up, I will be playing with water and kind of testing the water levels out there and seeing what kind of dye colors I can get. The when you're extracting from when you're dyeing with natural dyes, the water plays a major role in that, and sometimes there's certain pollutants and chemicals in certain waters that will change the color of your dye, and so I'll be out there testing that out. Yeah, and then the kinfolk thing, well, we'll talk about that later.
This is really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So, like the different undulations of your journey. I have a comment first and then a question. The comment is, at one point you said something like I look forward to being a leader in the art community or something in the future. And as I was listening to you, I'm like, you already are. So I just wanted to share that reflection. And then my question is, it's really beautiful to see how your art portfolio of your like entire career has developed from like your relationship with like the land and your family. But I'm kind of curious as to if you take the point where you are now and you were to connect with like your 8-year-old self, did you see trends of your passion and relationship with like the earth and climate? Like, did you see those pieces of it in your youth? And if so, like how, looking back now, how did it make sense that you got to where you are now?
Ooh, that's kind of one of the problems that I've come across because it you know for me like I didn't have access to the outdoors like that. I grew up in an urban city here, and for me, going camping and doing like outdoor things like that were things that weren't accessible to me. Like we didn't do that, and there were things that I thought like, people did on television, that had money. So like it was just one of those things that I just thought I didn't have access to, and it was becoming more apparent that as I got older, that there were things that I did want to do, but I just like didn't realize it well into adulthood that it was really because I was just conditioned to believe that I didn't have access to them, right? And I just like didn't have the resources for it. Like we couldn't afford to do stuff like that. And so I think, that's kind of part of a bigger problem, because there is like now a movement and an acknowledgement of that, a lot of people of color aren't like welcome in those spaces either, and so people are starting to be vocal about that. That makes sense.
A lot of your work deals with very heavy, somewhat depressing subject matters. What keeps you grounded, and what gives you hope from sort of going down a sort of dark, depressing path?
I mean, I have to have hope to keep doing it. It gets very depressing. I go through these waves where I'm just like, God, it just feels like things just got worse, and especially the way things are now. But I have to have some kind of hope, because I want to, keep making artwork about it too. If I don't have any hope at all, then I just like won't even like. What's the point of even trying to advocate for these things or for the community or anything like that? I don't know. It's just something more internal where I have to just keep pushing myself to, you know, keep pulling forward.
Hey, Eliana.
Hi.
A lot of your work is dealing with the environment and the climate, but it also seems to be centered around access. So my question is, for your audience members, for the people who are seeing your work, what is one thing you want them to take away from, or one thing that they could do to improve the environment and access?
Well, yeah. So I get asked that a lot at my talks. So that's why I have this last slide. That says want to help others, because someone had told me at one of the first talks that I did was like, how do I help or do something? So this is a list of organizations. If you can't donate your time, donate your money. And just really pay attention, and start being vocal about things. Don't just kind of push it away either. I get like, it gets overwhelming, and then, you just don't want to think about things. And, take your breaks, but make sure you come back.
Hey,
Hi.
have you found that your work has activated anyone? And so, on the theme of family and things like that, you found that it has activated anybody who's close to you, any friends, any family, have changed, like, I don't know, voting practices or just personal practices in terms of climate environment issues like that, things that they can do on a small scale. Have you seen any of that since you've been doing this work?
Yeah, throughout, I see it a lot in kind of the younger generation. I really try to speak to as many people as possible, but I really try to hit the different age groups too. And I think the work is the most like it impacts the younger generations the most. They're the ones that really respond to it, and it encourages them to do something about it. So yeah, like I've noticed that a lot more, because when I started doing stuff about climate things, I've always gotten pushback. Like it doesn't even matter. Like at every point in my life, I've gotten pushback with whatever work I was doing. It happened in grad school. It happened in my undergraduate. Like it's just I'm used to it, and I was a little concerned about the climate thing because when I started doing the work, there was some stuff coming out about it, like articles and stuff, but not a lot of people were talking about it that much. And so people got really, really sensitive about climate, and they still do get sensitive. They get angry. I've had artist talks where people, and during the question portion, get a little upset because they just don't, and they feel like it's out of their control, and so but yeah, like I just like try to encourage people as much as I can, and yeah, I really enjoy speaking to a lot of like the younger generation about it because they're very they absorb it more.
first of all, Eliana, I want to say that, using your art as a voice for these issues, I think um, it, it's very brave of you, and I really admire that. And kind of following up, and you, for example, you have chosen activism, as a very strong part of your practice, and it's a tough path to follow as an artist, especially nowadays. And I'm curious about what some of the challenges that you faced moving forward in this direction of activism, and what advice would you give to any other artists that are considering jumping in this path, being using their practice for activism, or any other people that are considering that?
One of the biggest challenges was kind of facing the realization that I might not make a lot of money from what I'm doing. I had to make that decision while I was at Hamilton, because I was thinking a lot, and I was reading a lot about all these issues, and then at the same time, I was surrounded by a lot of people who, make work for like, big commercial galleries, and I had to make that decision. I was like, I don't, I either go this other route, where it's more for like a monetary gain thing, or do I, make something that I feel is what I need to do, and means something to me, and risk not really making a lot of money from it. And so I just took that route, and I just like had to just make sure that I had the funds to do that, like I've always had to work another job, just to fund my practice because of that. And so that was like a big challenge, but I'm glad I did it that way because I always stayed true to what I wanted to make work about.
I think we're so lucky that we have you.
Oh, thank you.
And I think there's time for one more question.
If there were no limitations at all, and you had access to literally whatever you wanted for as much time as you wanted, what would be one of your dream projects to make?
Ooh. I don't even think about it in terms of just like a specific project. I think I would be more um, thankful for time, having the time to do something big. If I had it my way, I wouldn't have to work a job and, like fund my project. I would just, go live off of the land somehow and then just make art out there. But I don't know. I don't think in terms of like big projects that I want to do. I have like some ideas, but I think about just like being grateful for the time to come up with those projects, If that makes sense. I don't know. I probably didn't answer that, but sorry. I tried.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming out to first call. Maybe a round of applause. Thanks again. Hecho in Dallas is going to be up and on view until July 24th. We have a couple more talks coming up. In July, Antonio Lechuga will be delivering a similar talk, who's here in the audience. I think he's hiding from me, but please come out to that one. And then to cap off our artist talks, Francisco Moreno will be doing a talk later that month too. But feel free to reach out to Eliana. Maybe you can hold her for a couple minutes in the lobby before we break. But thanks again, everybody. One last round of applause for Eliana.